There is breaking news from Los Angeles. Hunter Biden, the president's son, pleaded guilty on all counts in his federal tax evasion case. Hunter Biden faced 9 charges, including 3 felony and 6 misdemeanor counts. The charges are related to his alleged failure to pay taxes and tax evasion from 2016 through 2019, when he was struggling with a drug addiction. The president's son owed nearly $1.5 million in unpaid taxes that was eventually paid back. Now, today's surprise developments come just months after Hunter Biden was convicted of lying on a 2018 federal form to purchase a gun he owned for 11 days. CBS's Adam Yamaguchi and Erica Brown are outside the federal courthouse in Los Angeles. And Adam, walk us through what happened.
Well, it was quite a day with a lot of twists and turns. We started off this morning with the expectation that this was just another day in court. Hunter Biden had pled not guilty to charges, and jury selection was set to begin. Court was convened. Judge started to lay out some of the procedures for how that jury selection would go. And then Hunter Biden's attorney had said, actually, none of this is going to be necessary because we are going to change our plea. That changed a couple times throughout the day, and ultimately where we landed this afternoon, just moments ago, was that he's going to plead guilty. The judge has accepted that, and sentencing will be scheduled for December.
All right, Erica Brown,
Erica, you were inside all day.
Yeah, I understand you were inside all day. Tell me about what happened behind the scenes and how much time is Hunter Biden facing in prison?
Well, Nora, as Adam mentioned, it was a series of twists and turns today. We came in anticipating jury selection to get underway as scheduled when Abby Lowell mentioned that Hunter Biden would like to change his plea. At that minute, we realized that this was going to be a plea to an Alfred plea, actually, which would be something a little bit different than entering a standard guilty plea. We went on recess. After that, Abby Lowell came back and said we actually want to enter an open plea. So as Adam had mentioned, the judge has accepted that open plea for all 9 charges, that guilty plea. He faces up to 17 years in prison and a maximum fine of up to $1.45 million. Sentencing will be held in December. But during this hearing, Hunter Biden was attentive. He was looking at his attorneys sharply, focused at the prosecution, especially when the prosecution was opposing this plea hearing, this plea entering. They said that this would be, the Alfred hearing in particular, would be an injustice. They said that Hunter Biden is not innocent. He is guilty and he should not be granted any special privileges. Hunter Biden was very sharply focused on prosecutors when they were making those assertions, ultimately entering that guilty plea. He stood up once during the hearing to be sworn in. And then when Judge Scarthy, who has been presiding over all of these proceedings from the beginning, asked him if he committed the crimes that were alleged in the indictment, Hunter Biden, remaining seated, said yes. That's when he essentially formally entered that guilty plea. Judge Scarthy accepting that plea and essentially wrapping up a day full of twists and turns, anticipating jurors to be questioned on their knowledge of the case, whether or not they will be eligible to serve, and instead ending here with a guilty plea entered and a sentencing date for December.
Erica and Adam, thank you very much. I want to bring in former Department of Justice, Principal Deputy Assistant Attorney General Tom Dupree is with us. And Tom, we've just heard what happened today. Explain the legal strategy that Hunter Biden's team used today.
Well, I think Hunter Biden's legal team reached the maybe non-controversial conclusion that there's no way he was going to win this case, and that standing trial would basically put a spotlight on all the sordid activities that he had engaged in over the last few years, which would happen at a very politically sensitive time. Obviously, his father's no longer a candidate, but I could see how they didn't want all of these things being aired. So they decided to plead guilty. They originally tried to negotiate an Alfred plea, which is a rare and unusual and controversial maneuver. Didn't surprise me that the Justice Department rejected it out of hand, but then they came quickly back to the judge and said he'll just enter an open plea, which is a normal plea of guilty. The judge accepted it and is now set sentencing for Hunter Biden in December.
And what do you think, while he faces a maximum of 17 years in prison, what do you think ultimately could be decided by the judge on December 16th?
I don't see the judge imposing anything anywhere close to the maximum sentence of 17 years. I think the judge will impose something far less than that. In all likelihood, I would think probably less than 5 years. But in a way, the larger point here is that, of course, he's also got in his back pocket, Hunter Biden, a pardon, or at least a very good possibility of a pardon from outgoing President Biden, who has said he won't pardon his son. But of course, he made that pledge before he withdrew as a candidate. So this sentencing proceeding is obviously important. But at the end of the day, the big question is going to be whether President Biden, on his last days in office, pardons his son.
No doubt. Tom Dupree, thank you very much. I want to bring in our senior White House correspondent, Weijia Jiang. And Weijia, what about what Tom was saying there? What is the likelihood that President Biden will pardon his only surviving son for these crimes?
Well, Nora, the Biden family, as you mentioned earlier, was just here in June when Hunter Biden was convicted of a gun felony charge. And back then and since then, President Biden has insisted many times that he would not pardon or commute Hunter Biden. And today, when we first learned that Hunter was planning to change his plea, the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, reiterated that and said, this changes nothing. The president is not going to take that action. But of course, he still can until the transfer of power. But they say that that is not something that he will consider because the president has spoken at length before about his faith and commitment to upholding the justice system. But of course, this is also very difficult for the president as a father. And even though we have not heard from him since this latest development, he has long said that despite Hunter Biden's criminal activities and his conviction before, that he's still very proud as a father and that he supports Hunter Biden. So if he does speak, Nora, we expect to hear something along those lines. But something else that Tom mentioned is worth mentioning again, which is that, you know, this allows President Biden to avoid the political and the personal distraction that could have unfolded in the next few months with a trial as he tries to shape his legacy in his last few days, last few months as president. Yeah.
And Weijia, we're watching now live pictures of Hunter Biden and his wife, Melissa, leaving U.S. District Court, where with this guilty plea, he is avoiding what could be a lengthy and very messy trial that not only talks about his tax evasion charges, but why he was evading taxes at the time. He was dealing with an addiction to drugs and alcohol. He was taking, as prosecutors allege, deductions and using some of the money that he didn't pay his taxes with for luxury cars and extravagant hotels and more. And so with this guilty plea, the Biden legal team hoping to avoid more of those disclosures. Weijia Jiang, and of course, we know Hunter Biden is very close with his father. The family visits one another regularly.
Yes, they are incredibly close. And during the last trial for Hunter's gun charges, the First Lady was actually by his side every single day except for one. And so this is an extremely close-knit family. And again, as we're talking about the president's last months in office, as he tries to shape his legacy, this is something that he, you know, did not want to be a distraction. And now they are able to move forward in whatever way they can, certainly without that circus of a trial.
Weijia Jiang at the White House. Thank you. And with that, once again, Hunter Biden pleaded guilty on all 9 counts in this federal tax case against him in California. The 54-year-old faces up to 17 years in prison and more than $1 million in fines. Sentencing will be December 13th. Notably, that is after the November election. And of course, the possibility that President Biden could pardon his son still exists. Our coverage will continue on CBS News 24/7, your local news. And then tonight, a full wrap up on the CBS Evening News. This has been a CBS News special report. I'm Nora O'Donnell.